In the last verse of Psalm 3, King David ends with a great statement of confidence. He says, "From the Lord comes deliverance." And you know what's interesting about that phrase? David wrote it when the Lord had not yet delivered him. In Psalm 3, his son Absalom is coming after him. 10,000 are surrounding him. That's what David says. So there's a lot of opposition, a lot of things unknown. And yet David confidently says, "From the Lord comes deliverance." In other words, David was living by faith. And that's the way that God's people have always had to live. By faith. Believing that God will deliver, believing that God cares, believing that God will keep his promises. Even when we can't see how that's going to happen. You just think of all the different individuals in the Bible who've had to live by faith. Hebrews chapter 11, the great heroes of faith chapter in the Bible, lists so many different ones. I won't list all of them, but it talks about Abraham leaving his homeland, going to a place that was completely unknown to him, just because God told him to. We didn't know how it was going to go. We didn't know what the climate was going to be like or how the neighbors were going to treat him. He just knew that God was with him. It took faith. Hebrews chapter 11 talks about Noah, who started building a boat for water that hadn't yet touched the earth and wouldn't touch the earth for a very long time. After 10 years of building an ark, he still had a lot more to build. After 20 and 30 and 40 and 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 120 years of building and building and building for a flood that he did not see coming. He had faith. When God told Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, to kill his own flesh and blood, what a strange request to come from God. And yet he was ready to. Because he had faith that God was good. He believed that God was good. Even if it maybe didn't sound like it in the moment. It's hard. The Israelites, as they're marching around Jericho, marching around the city for 7 days, first 6 days marching around, and the folks from Jericho, you can picture them making fun of them, yelling at them, ridiculing them, and just whatever else. And they just had to take it. But they were walking with faith. They were walking with faith that God would do the good thing that he had in mind. That God would do what he had promised and give the land to them. They had faith. And then go all the way back to the beginning. We don't know how long Eve lived. The Bible tells us that Adam lived over 900 years, and as he lived in a world that he had broken, with a heart that revealed its brokenness again and again and again, many times after the first sin, he would have had to live by faith. That the promise God gave him back in the garden, the promise of a Savior who hadn't yet come, even on the day that Adam died, Adam had to die by faith too. But of course the Savior did come. And God did deliver him. And Moses, and Abraham, and Noah, and the Israelites. I don't know what kind of day today was for you. It was easy to see God active and loving you. Or like many of the days for God's people have been throughout time, it was difficult to see the activity of a God who promises to be there for you. But just remember one key characteristic of God's people throughout time. We live by faith in a God who has never failed to prove that He is a God that is worth believing in. And again, think of the day when it was hardest to have faith. When it was easiest to believe that the God we put our hope in is dying. The same day when it looked like the God that we put our hope in was dead, and then taken down from a cross and buried. That would have been a hard day to have faith too. But then Sunday came, and God delivered yet again, just like He always will for me and you. Rest well tonight, my friends.